forced to retire after 30 years. The electrician was sought out by the mayor days later to restore power to the city. Henry Thompson was 64 years old. He was an electrician who had worked for the town of Brookhaven for 30 years. He never took a sick day. His rough hands showed scars from years of fixing wires. Each scar told a story of lights turned back on during storms, holidays, or emergencies. Henry was as important to Brookhaven as the wires under its streets. His best skill wasn't just fixing things, though he was great at that. It was his memory. Henry knew the whole underground power map in his head. Every wire, box, and connection from before computers drew the plans. He could close his eyes and see exactly where cables met under any street. "It's like having a map app for electricity in my brain," he teased the younger workers. Henry worked carefully, always double-checking his tasks. His record showed no big mistakes in 30 years. When storms cut the power, he led crews straight to the problem spots. During the big snowstorm of 2010, he worked 36 hours straight. He kept the hospital's lights on while the rest of the area went dark. But Henry had one weakness in today's world. He wasn't good with technology. His big fingers struggled with phone screens. He liked paper notes better than computer forms. Young workers admired his knowledge but chuckled when he fumbled with the new tablet system. Things changed when the town hired Nathan Brooks. Nathan was 34, with a business degree and no experience fixing wires. He wore fancy glasses and always carried a shiny new phone. He wanted to make Brookhaven's power system modern. "Our goal is a smart town with a smart power grid," he said at his first meeting. "No more paper, no more guessing, no more old ways." Henry tried to keep up. He went to training classes, squinting at screens. He wrote notes by hand while others typed fast. But the new rules needed speed, and Henry's careful ways were too slow. 3 months later, Nathan called Henry into his office. The office had glass walls looking out over the workyard. "Your work stats aren't good enough," Nathan said, staring at his computer. "You take twice as long to enter data as everyone else. But I fix things faster than most." Henry said, "Writing is just slow for me." "That's not how we measure work now," Nathan replied, finally looking up. "The town is spending millions on a smart grid. We need people who can use AI systems, not old school methods." Henry nodded quietly. "I can learn," he said. "I've adapted to changes for 30 years. Nathan sighed, acting patient. "Your time is over," he said. "I need workers who are up to date, not stuck in the past." The talk might have stayed private, but Nathan left the door open. A dozen workers overheard. Henry saw them look away as he left the office. The next morning, Nathan gave a big repair job to a worker with only 3 years of experience. He skipped Henry completely. "Shouldn't Henry fix Oak Avenue?" someone asked. "He rebuilt that power station in 2003. We're using new rules now," Nathan said, brushing it off. "This isn't 2003. Henry stood there, his worn face showing nothing. When the meeting ended and everyone left, Henry stayed behind. "I need people who get modern systems," Nathan said before Henry could speak. "If you don't retire, I'll have to make tough choices about your job." The workyard went quiet. Everyone watched as Henry took off his work gloves. He folded them neatly and set them on the desk. He unclipped his work ID and took off his locker key. He placed them next to the gloves. Without a word, he walked across the yard to the exit. No big speech, no anger, just steady steps. He was a man who showed his value through work, not words. He was good in his time. A young worker whispered as the door closed. "But now it's all about smart tech." Nathan hired a new worker fresh from tech school. In a town newsletter, he said, "We're updating our team to match Brookhaven's goal of being a smart town. Sometimes, that means tough staff changes." Within days, Henry Thompson's 30 years of work were forgotten. His nameplate was gone from his locker. His parking spot sat empty. His file was marked, archived, in the town's records. Henry went back to his small house on the edge of Brookhaven. It was a simple place with a workshop in the backyard. Unlike his old co-workers, who stayed connected online, Henry kept to himself. Without work, he felt alone. His phone rarely rang. He said no to the few invites to retirement parties. Instead, he spent his days with old books and manuals. He had electrical codes from years past. He had handwritten notes about tricky repairs. He had sketches of clever fixes for tough problems. Sometimes, he spread them on his kitchen table. He traced how Brookhaven's power grid had grown over the years. One day, while Henry was trimming bushes in his front yard, a 10-year-old girl from next door came by. "My mom says you used to fix power for the whole town," she said, holding a scooter. "Is that true?" Henry smiled, brushing dirt off his hands. "I helped keep the lights on for a bit," he said. "Did you do anything big? Like in the news?" she asked. Henry thought for a moment. "I kept the power on during 3 straight storm seasons," he said. "Once for 40 days when the river substations flooded." The girl frowned. "I looked you up online. But there was nothing," she said. "Not everything big ends up online," Henry said kindly. The girl shrugged, not impressed, and scooted away. That talk stuck with Henry. That night, he searched his name online. He found little: a mention in a 2005 town newsletter for a work award, a photo from a 2010 town picnic. Nothing showed his years of early morning calls or holiday fixes. Nothing captured the knowledge he held. Meanwhile, Brookhaven was becoming a smart town. The big project was a new power control system. It used computers to watch energy, predict needs, and fix outages automatically. The mayor cut a ribbon at the opening, calling it the future. He said old manual ways were history. No one mentioned the town's old wires. Brookhaven, like many towns, had power lines from the 1960s. They'd been patched and changed over decades. The new computer maps used official plans. But those plans missed thousands of small fixes. Temporary solutions had become permanent. Handmade changes kept things running but weren't written down. Days after the system started, problems appeared. Street lights flickered in the town square. Traffic lights at 3 big corners went out for 15 minutes during rush hour. The hospital had power dips that started its backup generators. The new team tried hard to find the issues. But the computer system didn't match the real wires. "It's like there are hidden connections," one worker told Nathan. "The system sees power paths that aren't in our maps." "That's not possible," Nathan said. "Our maps come from the official town plans. Those plans don't show 30 years of field changes," the worker said. "About a quarter of our grid was tweaked by hand. So find someone who knows these changes," Nathan ordered. The worker glanced at her team. "We had someone," she said. "Henry Thompson." Nathan shook his head. "We're not going back," he said. "Find another way." As the team struggled, the town's mayor, Clara Evans, grew worried. She'd been mayor long enough to remember Henry's reliability. "Do we have the old paper maps?" she asked in a meeting. "The ones with handwritten notes?" The room went quiet. "Henry had them," someone said. "He was the last one who kept the paper records. We don't know if they're still around after we went digital." Another added. The mayor rubbed her forehead. "So our fancy new system can't read our real power grid? We have no true maps of what's under our streets. And we let go of the one person who knew it all by heart?" No one answered. With storm season coming, the town was at risk. A crisis was brewing that tech alone couldn't fix. Henry's name wasn't famous, but he'd kept the lights on through 3 storm seasons. If you think there are heroes without statues, think Unsung. The storm hit on a Tuesday night in September. It came early and stronger than expected. Rain turned into fierce winds that knocked down trees across Brookhaven. By 6 p.m., a power box blew out on the west side. By 7:30, half the town was dark. In the shiny new control center, workers stared at screens. The system showed failures spreading fast. The computers, confused by wrong data, shut down big parts of the grid. Emergency plans to protect the hospital and fire stations didn't work right. Mayor Evans stood behind the main worker, watching the screen turn red. "The Oak Avenue power station is the key," the worker said, sweating. "If we fix that, we can get power to emergency services." "Then fix it," Nathan snapped, his calm breaking. "We can't find the right connections," she said. "That station was changed in 2003 for a town project. Its setup isn't standard. We try one setup, and it fails. The computer doesn't know the custom wiring. Call every retired worker until you find someone who knows that station." The mayor said. "We've tried," the worker said. "There's only one person who'd know every detail." She didn't need to say Henry's name. Outside, the storm grew worse. Floods hit the north side. The hospital was on backup power. But it wouldn't last long. The fire department said without power for pumps, they couldn't fight fires well. At 8:45 p.m., Mayor Evans made a choice. Over Nathan's objections, she grabbed what they had, a partial map, a town truck, and her authority. She drove through the stormy streets to a small house on Brookhaven's edge. Henry Thompson was on his porch, watching the storm by a battery lantern. He wasn't shocked when the truck pulled up. He'd expected someone since his own lights flickered hours earlier. But he was surprised to see the mayor herself step out, holding wet papers. Rain poured as Mayor Evans walked to the porch. She knelt on the wet steps. A moment later, shared online by the driver's phone. "Henry," she said, her voice soft against the wind. "We were wrong. The town needs you." Henry stayed quiet, his face lit by the lantern. Mayor Evans held out the damp maps, partial copies of Henry's old records. "The Oak Avenue station is down," she said. "The hospital has maybe 3 hours of power left. We can't figure out the wiring you set up." Henry took the papers. He unfolded them carefully and looked for just 10 seconds. "Your new system hooked the backup line to the wrong ground point," he said simply. "It's not the computer failing. It's that no one understood how the old system was balanced." He stood, grabbing his old work jacket from a hook. "I'll come," he said, not for praise, not for the town office, but because people in that hospital need power to live. In 20 minutes, Henry was at the Oak Avenue station. The team there had familiar faces and new ones. Even Nathan watched quietly as Henry looked over the machines. He knew them like his own home. Henry pulled a small pencil from his pocket, a habit he never lost. He gave clear, short instructions. His hands moved smoothly, pointing out connections. He explained the custom wiring he'd done years ago. The town grid was overloading in busy hours. He said as he worked, "We couldn't afford a full rebuild. So we made a backup system to shift power in emergencies. It's not in the official plans because it was meant to be temporary. But it worked so well. We kept it." A young worker filmed Henry's steps on a tablet, saving the details that should have been recorded. Firefighters stood by in rain gear, knowing their work depended on Henry. At 10:15 p.m., the Oak Avenue station buzzed back to life. Lights came on across Brookhaven, section by section. The hospital reported steady power. Emergency radios crackled with news of restored areas. Henry stepped back, watching the town light up. He said nothing as the mayor patted his shoulder. He stayed quiet as Nathan offered a stiff handshake. He nodded as firefighters saluted before racing to their calls. By morning, as the storm cleared, a photo spread online. It showed an older man in a worn jacket, reading a wet map by flashlight. Younger workers stood around him, listening. The caption, written by the worker who filmed, said, "The man with hand-drawn maps saved our town from the dark." A week later, the Brookhaven Town Council held a special meeting. They wanted to honor Henry Thompson's work. They planned a big event with news cameras and a speech from the mayor. They would give Henry a plaque. Henry agreed to come but asked for no speeches, especially not from him. At the event, Henry stood awkwardly as the mayor read a short statement. It praised his 30 years and his role in the storm. The room cheered loudly. Henry raised a hand for quiet. "I have one wish," he said, his voice soft but clear. "I'd like the old power grid maps hung in the work department, so someone might remember there was a person who drew them by hand." His simple words hit harder than any long speech. The council agreed right away. The next day, Henry returned to the work department. Not as a worker, but to help. The old maps were framed and hung on the main wall. They were behind glass but easy to see. A new training class started. Young workers, used to computers, sat around Henry. He showed them how to feel wires with their fingers. He taught them to listen for small sounds that warned of problems. He explained how to think beyond screens to understand the grid like a living thing. A young woman with a tech degree stayed after one class. "Why didn't you teach at a school?" she asked. "You explain better than my teachers." Henry smiled. "I don't have a degree," he said. "I learned from the man who kept the town's lights on for 30 years before me." She looked surprised. Henry kept teaching, sharing what he knew. The town's lights stayed on. The maps on the wall reminded everyone of the man who carried them in his head. Henry's work lived on, not in headlines, but in every light that glowed in Brookhaven.